August 1961. The heart of Berlin is torn in two. Families are separated overnight by a crude wall of cinder blocks and barbed wire, a physical manifestation of a world divided not by a hot war, but by a chilling ideological standoff. This was the Cold War, a conflict fought not with armies clashing on battlefields, but in the shadows, in space, and in the minds of people everywhere. It may seem like a distant chapter of history, but the echoes of this 50-year struggle are all around us, shaping the very fabric of our modern world in ways you might not even realize. So, how did this global rivalry between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, come to define the 20th century? And more importantly, how does its legacy continue to influence our politics, our technology, and even our culture today? Let's rewind the clock. The year is 1945. World War II has ended, leaving a trail of unprecedented devastation. The old European empires are shattered. Amidst the ruins, two new giants emerge, each with a fundamentally different vision for the future. On one side, the United States championing capitalism, democracy, and individual freedom. On the other, the Soviet Union promoting communism, a state-controlled economy, and collective ideology. They were allies against a common enemy, but that alliance was a marriage of convenience. Once the war was over, deep-seated mistrust quickly surfaced. The Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin, sought to create a buffer zone of friendly communist states in Eastern Europe to protect itself from future invasion. This was seen by the West, led by Winston Churchill, as an iron curtain descending across the continent, dividing Europe into two hostile blocs. The United States responded with the Truman Doctrine in 1947, a policy of containment designed to stop the spread of communism. This wasn't just a political strategy. It was a promise to support any nation resisting subjugation. The Marshall Plan followed, pouring billions of dollars into rebuilding Western Europe. The goal was twofold: to restore economic stability and to make capitalism look a lot more appealing than communism. By 1949, the lines were drawn. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, was formed, a military alliance of Western nations. The Soviets answered with their own alliance, the Warsaw Pact, formalizing the military division of Europe. The Cold War had officially begun. The conflict wasn't just confined to Europe. It went global. The first major flashpoint was Korea. In 1950, the Communist North, backed by the Soviets and China, invaded the capitalist South, supported by the United States and the United Nations. After 3 years of brutal fighting and millions of casualties, the war ended in a stalemate, leaving the Korean peninsula divided to this day, a frozen conflict and a stark reminder of the era's tensions. But the most terrifying aspect of the Cold War was the nuclear arms race. In 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb, ending America's nuclear monopoly. Suddenly, the world was living under a new, terrifying shadow: the threat of mutually assured destruction, or MAD. The logic was simple and insane. If either side launched a nuclear attack, the other would retaliate, leading to the annihilation of both. This high-stakes game of chicken reached its peak in October 1962. American spy planes discovered Soviet nuclear missile sites under construction in Cuba, just 90 miles from Florida. For 13 days, the world held its breath as President John F. Kennedy and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev engaged in a tense standoff. Secret negotiations, naval blockades, and brinkmanship brought humanity closer to nuclear war than ever before or since. In the end, diplomacy prevailed. The Soviets agreed to remove the missiles in exchange for a U.S. pledge not to invade Cuba and a secret promise to remove American missiles from Turkey. While the world teetered on the brink of annihilation, the rivalry also spurred incredible innovation. The space race began in 1957 when the Soviets launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. This was a huge propaganda victory and a technological shock to the Americans. It ignited a frantic competition to conquer the final frontier. The U.S. poured resources into science and education. Creating NASA in 1958, the Soviets sent the first man into space, Yuri Gagarin, in 1961. But it was the United States that ultimately won the race to the moon when Neil Armstrong took his one small step in 1969. This competition wasn't just about national pride. It led to breakthroughs that we now take for granted. Satellite communications, GPS, and even the microchips in your phone all have their roots in Cold War research and development. The Internet itself began as ARPANET, a Defense Department project designed to create a decentralized communication network that could survive a nuclear attack. The Cold War was also fought through culture and information. It was a battle for hearts and minds. American jazz music, blue jeans, and Hollywood movies were smuggled behind the Iron Curtain, representing a world of freedom and consumer choice. Radio stations like Voice of America and Radio Free Europe broadcast Western news and culture to audiences living under communist rule. The Soviets, in turn, promoted their own achievements in ballet, classical music, and sport, holding up their Olympic athletes as proof of the superiority of the communist system. But by the 1980s, the Soviet Union was struggling. Years of massive military spending, a stagnant economy, and a costly, unwinnable war in Afghanistan had taken their toll. In 1985, a new, younger leader came to power, Mikhail Gorbachev. He introduced two revolutionary policies: glasnost, meaning openness, and perestroika, meaning restructuring. He hoped to reform the communist system, not destroy it. But his reforms uncorked decades of pent-up frustration. Across Eastern Europe, popular movements for democracy began to swell. In 1989, in one of the most iconic moments of the 20th century, the people of Berlin began to tear down the wall that had divided their city for nearly 30 years. It was a symbolic end to the Iron Curtain. One by one, the communist regimes of Eastern Europe collapsed. The Soviet Union itself could not survive the tidal wave of change. On Christmas Day, 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev resigned, and the Soviet flag was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time. After more than 4 decades, the Cold War was over. So, what is its lasting legacy? Well, it's everywhere. The alliances of the era, like NATO, still shape international security and have even expanded. The unresolved conflicts, like the division of Korea, remain global hotspots. The nuclear weapons developed during the arms race still pose an existential threat, with thousands of warheads remaining in arsenals around the world. Our political landscape is also a product of the Cold War. The post-war consensus on international cooperation and institutions was forged in response to the ideological divide. The very concept of a first, second, and third world originated from this period. On a technological level, as we've seen, the Cold War's competitive drive accelerated the development of space travel, computing, and global communications. Even the layout of the American interstate highway system was partly designed for rapid military deployment. The Cold War was a time of fear, paranoia, and immense danger. But it was also a period of incredible change, resilience, and unexpected progress. It showed how ideological conflict could push humanity to the brink, but also how it could drive us to reach for the stars. Understanding this complex chapter of our recent past is essential to understanding the world we live in today's tensions, its alliances, and the very technology that connects us all. What do you think is the most significant legacy of the Cold War? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this journey through history compelling, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. Thanks for watching.